Back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salailo Makwidiri, on your home of humanitarian journalism. The time is 17 minutes past 8, and the name of the show is News and Views right here on Salam Media, where we cut through the noise and ask the questions that matter. This morning, we're diving head first into one of South Africa's most polarizing policies, triple BEE, or BEE for short, a bold tool for economic redress or a broken vehicle that has enriched the few while the many remain locked out. As global attitudes seem to almost shift away from, diversity driven policies, pressure is mounting locally. Some say it's time to scrap BE altogether. Others argue we haven't even implemented it properly. So where to from here regarding this policy? And to help us make sense of this, we'll be joined by someone who knows the boardroom and the policy trenches. He's a businessman, he's a former politician, and a chair of KasiKonnect and Kane Holdings, Professor Mthunzi Mdwaba. Professor, good morning and welcome to News and Views. Thank you so much for joining us. I saw it fitting to have you on the show regarding this topic because you're a businessman of color. I'm sure you've interacted with BEE in some shape or form at some point in your life. But I want to know, 30 years on, looking at this policy, what it entails, what it was planned for, how do you assess and analyze its relevance in 2025 post-apartheid South Africa?
Good morning, Silayalo. Assalamu alaikum to all your listeners. I hope that the connectivity doesn't become a problem. I see it buffering once in a while, but it comes back quite quickly. I think for me, thank you for having me on your show again. I've got to start by saying two things that you've mentioned. One is that whether we call it broad-based black economic empowerment, triple B, double E, or if we just call it BE for short. I think for me it's very important to look at the significance of it having been called broad-based black economic empowerment because the strategy document was written during Alec Ewing's time when he was the minister of DTI in around 2001, 2002, and it was published in 2003. I think that sets the context. Secondly, based on that opening statement, it therefore means we need to correct the narrative. It is not 30 years since the broad-based black economic empowerment legislation or policy was passed. Yes, it is over 30 years since our democracy, but not BEE. So from a BEE point of view, 2003 to 2025 gives you 22 years. So let's also be fair to the concept. Now, having addressed that as a context, as an opening, I've got to say to you that my view is that BEE needs to be remodeled. The reason for it being remodeled is not necessarily the policy, but it is the application. It is the lack of proper application for me that needs to be looked at. It is the lack of inclusivity that has happened because without inclusive growth, we cannot have an economy that works. I have a lot of young people who say to me, they hear about BEE, they hear about the economy, but they can't touch it. There's no way they can touch this economy because they are not part of it. They can't access it. They can't access finances to be able to do anything with it. They can't finance resources. They can't finance skills. So the application of BEE in its broadness has failed us, Silayelo. That's how I would like to
Mm,
start.
mm, mm. And then now the question is, you speak of a remodeling of BEE. Where would you start? I know it's a very, very multifaceted policy, but in its foundation, everything that makes a part of what should make it more effective, where should we be starting when we come to remodeling BEE and what it should be doing?
Well, Silayelo, I hope that your listeners are aware of what is called a scorecard way of doing things. So I was part of drafting the ICT Charter, back in 2000, I think 2002. And as part of that process of drafting the ICT Charter, we spent a lot of time consulting, a lot of time going around the country trying to understand what the ills are that must be redressed and addressed, what the challenges are, and how to get this economic development that covers everybody. And I want to repeat, an economic development and emancipation and empowerment that covers everyone, that does not marginalize everybody. Now, when you work with a scorecard, you would know that in the B.E.E policy, you've got ownership,
Mm.
you've got skills development, you've got enterprise development, you've got your corporate social responsibility that's in it, you've got your management and control. Now, these elements unfortunately have not been applied with the same passion and enthusiasm as the ownership one has been. And that for me is the biggest problem. So we need to start by going back to what the intention was. You know, there's something in law, we always talk about the interpretation of a statute. And when
Mm.
you seek to understand a legal principle or a legal policy or a piece of work in law, you have to go back to what was intended. And did we do what was intended? Was the objective met with reality and practical implementation? The answer here is no, because when you go into skills development, we haven't given the same enthusiasm to ensure that skills development is done in a way that is able to translate to employability, so that we don't have the high levels of unemployment, in a way that
Mm.
is able to translate to economic prosperity. Because if you're an entrepreneur, that skill of being an entrepreneur or that skill of being an innovator has been able to be translated through enablement for you to be able to run a company and run it sustainably, right?
Mm.
So if those don't happen, then we continue to have high levels of unemployment. We continue to have high levels of inequality measured by the Gini coefficient, which South Africa is amongst the highest in the world, right? So we need to start there. Secondly, what we need to do is to recognize that, unfortunately, the way BE was done, I'll never forget when Asilailo, just by way of a side little quip and and funny stuff, we were supposed to go to the BRICS. It was BRIC at the time in 2009. There was no S for South Africa, right?
Mhm.
We have India, Brazil, South Africa. So we used to have IPSA meetings, and South Africa was applying to be part of BRICS. We were going together with Minister Davis at the time, was the Minister of DTI. A lot of the guys, when we got to the airport, when they realized that the traveling to Brazil had nothing to do with getting deals there, the
Mm.
guys turned back and never left. Two or three of us left for Brazil. The whole team of another 10 guys who were meant to be part of the team that is going to negotiate for South Africa to be part of BRICS did not go because there wasn't a transaction. Now, this transaction mindedness by some of us is a problem, right? We ended up, some people don't know, I was the person who ended up signing the BRICS agreement, by the way, in Brasilia. But people don't know that in South Africa today because I was never included in the committees that work with BRICS and so on. But the reason I'm mentioning it now is because the idea for us is look for a transaction. You don't look to empowering and enabling your communities. You don't look to ensuring that you bring everybody along with you because you were fortunate enough to be in that position. We are not simply just talented people alone on our own, but when we are blessed by being given an opportunity to do things, we must bring everybody with us. And how do we bring everybody with us? We make sure that it is inclusive of the young people, it is inclusive of innovators, it is inclusive of women, it is inclusive of disabled people, and we don't leave our communities behind, Slayelo, right?
Mm.
And in doing a transaction, you need to look at the supply chain of the environment you're in. You need to look at the value system of where you are and see, for example, I'm busy doing an aquaculture ocean economy transaction at the moment. And one of the things I'm learning in partnership with Norwegians, we're doing it in the Eastern Cape. I'm understanding that there's a lot of people in the communities that have licenses to be involved in the ocean economy. And South Africa is behind on its targets from an ocean economy point of view. But would you believe that there's probably less than 0.1% of the people that have those licenses that are able to use those licenses because they are given licenses, but they're not given the resourcing to be part of the value chain and be part of supply chains to work with people who are owners of many things that happen within BE and otherwise, right? And the
Mm.
next point for me that is important is this. Somehow people decided that when you do BEE, you've got to always buy into a white owned business. You've got to buy into somebody else's something. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can empower a business, work with white counterparts, work with everybody. But what about the fact that 65% of the economy, Laelo, has got informality in it? Has got rural environments in it. Now that's over 65% of South Africa. Why is it that we are not looking for innovative and creative ways of going into our rural environments and ensuring that they are also part of this economic development? So BEE, as in a sense, can work if it is applied correctly within the areas, in communities, in places that have no economic development, not only by going into the 35% that is white owned and that is JSE related in terms of the joint stock exchange, Johannesburg Stock Exchange, but we go into new areas as well. I think those are the reflections we need to make amongst ourselves.
Really, really important points that you're touching, and I think you even slightly just encroached on my next point, which I want us to touch on after the break. The most critical part of BEE is the fact that it seems to have created or become a VIP pass for the politically connected. Is it fair to ask, that BEE has maybe intentionally or unintentionally become a black elite enrichment scheme of some sort, or a black bourgeoisie, that has been created? And it goes back to the point that you're making, that it hasn't really filtered through to the communities where there's literally no economic activity. But I want us to touch on that after the break. What it has morphed into, and this almost black elitist group that it has benefited.
With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying, or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
They say breakfast is the most important meal of the day, yet many children go to school hungry because of poverty. Penny Appeal South Africa's Breakfast Club aims to get a warm, hearty meal to underprivileged children so they can spend their day prospering in their schoolwork. Help feed a needy learner for only 5 Rand a day, or 150 Rand a month. Or visit our website www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 1100 573 to find out how you can donate. Penny Appeal South Africa. Small change, big difference.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Operation Kurbani Maulana Timor will once again be taking a trip abroad for Kurbani. Many people in the villages live well below the poverty line and only eat meat on the days of Eid al-Adha. Support this cause at 2,100 Rand for 7 shares or 300 Rand per share. Contact Maulana Timor, Maulana Sajjad, Maulana Hamad or Maulana Abbad on 011 852 6324 or 072 299 9268 or 082 368 68 66 or 072 697 0131 or 073 576 9786. All slaughtering will be supervised by a team of foreign and local ulama. Visit www.operationkurbani.org.za.
Abu Huraira narrated that he heard the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, say, "In black seed there is a healing for every disease except death. Experience the health benefits of this ancient blessed seed by using the Tib Black Seed range. Black seed assists the body to boost immunity, regulate blood sugar levels, reduce inflammation, and act as a potent antioxidant. Experience a holistic approach to health by introducing the Tib Black Seed range into your routine. Available in capsules, pure cold-pressed oil, and a vapor rub. Trust Tib Health Sciences for quality black seed products. For more information, visit blackseed.co.za. Available at leading pharmacies.
Connect and stay ahead with Salam Media. This is Salam Media, coming to you live from South Africa.
Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salailo Makwidir, and I'm still having, I think, a very insightful and important conversation with Professor Mthunzi Mdwaba. He's a businessman, he's a former politician, he's a CEO of KasiKonnect in TZoro Holdings, and we're having a conversation around B.E.E. It's usually a very, very uncomfortable conversation. Usually when you bring up its legitimacies, validity, you are thought to be anti-transformation or sellout by many. So yeah, it's really important conversation to have. Prof, before we went to the break, thank you so much for staying with us. I wanted to touch on the biggest criticism of B.E.E., that it has become a VIP pass for the politically connected, and it has created a black bourgeoisie in essence. What do you make of that? That it has become a black elitist enrichment scheme for those that are politically connected.
Well, I think we need to be careful. There's nothing wrong with the creation of a black bourgeoisie, but the assumption is that the black bourgeoisie has to be alive to the fact that it can be a few individuals. It's got to be as broad as possible to bring as many people in society as possible. But you are correct. It has become an elitist thing, B.E.E., because as I said earlier, it has never been applied the way it was intended, to be broad-based in its remit and in its application. The reason for that, Sililo, is that we are lazy. People are inherently lazy sometimes, because we're all mindful of diversity, that it is strong, it gives you strength. We are all mindful that we must leave nobody behind. We say these things, for example, in the multilateral environment in the United Nations, leave nobody behind. But we all leave people behind. Why? Because we are lazy to look at potential. We are lazy to train. We are lazy to skill other people. We are lazy to share knowledge. We are lazy to look for people other than the people we know. You see, if you remember the problem with white businesses in the past when B.E.E. was introduced and employment equity was introduced, you may be a little bit young and may not remember this. Maybe I'll just tell you what used to happen. White people would tell you they cannot find black people. White people would say, we can't find black people. What do you mean we can't find black people? This 80%. Yes, we can't find black people. Now, we do the same thing as black people. All of a sudden, we can't find other black people that we can bring along with us. We want to work with the same five, Mthunzi and his friends, every day, because we don't want to look for potential outside Mthunzi and outside Silayelo, right? Why? Because it broadens the cake. And I mean this in the well-meaning environments, people are lazy. But then there's the corrupt side of things that seeks to only empower itself and its friends in their pockets. There's also that too. Unfortunately, we've allowed B.E.E. to be usurped by corruption completely. But B.E.E. is a way of empowering black people inherently. Anybody who's uncomfortable with Islam is a hypocrite. Because the very same Afrikaners The Afrikaners were built on Afrikaner empowerment, in able to empower and emancipate themselves from the English. That's how the Sun...
Afrikanerdom.
Sorry?
Afrikanerdom.
Yes.
Afrikanerdom. Yeah.
Yes, the Sanlams of this world were built from that, right? The Volkskas banks that morphed into many things that went and became APSAs and whatever you, came from that. There was nothing wrong with it, and it's been around forever, right? Now, B.E.E has been around for 22 years. We shouldn't have uncomfortable conversations, but we should be able to say it is not being applied correctly. There's something wrong with it in the way it is being done, because when you do it right, when you look at transformation within an inclusive growth mold, then we need to be able to say we are creating a more equitable distribution of resources and opportunities for everyone, Slayelo. All must participate. No one must be marginalized, right? When we talk about the creation of sustainable jobs, reducing inequality, and improving living standards, and so on, we're talking about dignity for all people. So dignity needs to be our rallying cry in whatever we do, right? And when we talk broad-based Black economic empowerment, we need to be alive to things like employment equity, which is part of it. Skills development, which is part of it. Enterprise development, which is part of it. Management and control, which is part of broad-based economic empowerment in terms of its scorecard. We need to look at how we have an investment in human capital, education, healthcare, skills. We need to have at what I refer to as collaborationist models. You know, I build ecosystems, of how do we work with each other, because unfortunately, as I've said before in your program, we've inherited disdain and disrespect for each other, which we took from colonialism. We don't treat each other as Black people with respect and go back to our communities and make sure that we take everybody with us as we move along. This is what we need to do. The more inclusive we are in our approach, the more we look at economic development as something in which everyone must participate, the more broad-based Black economic empowerment is going to work. So for me, I disagree with anyone who says it must be scrapped. I disagree, as I said in one article that I wrote on the IMF and the World Bank, I said to them, they must back off. They don't know what they are talking about. Yes, they can say we are not covering broad base. Yes, that's correct. Yes, we're not having inclusive economic growth. Yes, that's correct. But there's nothing wrong with B.E.E per se. I've written an article that will probably come out in another 3 weeks or so, 4 weeks, for the Black Management Forum, for a magazine called African Leadership Magazine, where I'm saying they were talking about the sustainability of or the future of Black owned business. And I said, you know, it can never be sustainable Black owned business, similarly to B.E.E being narrow, if it doesn't have inclusive economic growth embedded in it. Then we will have sustainability because everybody is happy.
Mm, mm, mm. I want to, touch on something which is of current affairs, and it ties down with B.E.E very well. In the wake of the Trump effect, if we can call it that, and what almost feels like a global retreat from diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. They call them DEI policies. Multinational companies are also almost starting to get cold feet of policies that look like and sound like a B.E.E kind of policy. How should South Africa now double down on that reality? How do you now maneuver a world that is slowly moving away from policies that look like the B.E.E when you have slow economic growth, you have high unemployment, and you want to get the country moving? You want to become an investment hub like you used to be.
Well, let's start by talking a little bit about the Trump element, because it's coupled with something you mentioned earlier called the Elon Musk element, right? Now, Elon Musk is just a racist. I'm sorry. Similarly to Trump, these are racists. When you're talking to racists and people who lie and talk about genocide that cannot have never be true, his own father lives in South Africa. His own father has always been in South Africa, benefits from this country. Let's start there. Secondly, this Starlink of his, we must never allow it to be given any exception. I don't care who says what in the Oval Office or wherever they say things and the regulations they are trying to introduce. Starlink is not even the best thing you can ever find. It's very mediocre. We've got very gifted black innovators in this country who can do much better than Starlink. Now, let me answer your question on the multinationals. Multinationals, depending, of course, where they come from, I've always found, even when we're drafting the ICT charter, if you go onto Google and you look for, I made a speech in 2006 when I was IT Personality of the Year, where I said, satis est satis, enough is enough. Because the American multinationals have always tried to resist black economic empowerment. They've always tried to find ways around it. The European-based ones have always been a lot better. But now all multinationals need to know, and there's many regulations in the ILO, in the United Nations, that multinationals, when they go to indigenous environments and they go to a particular country, they need to respond and respect the laws of that country. They need to play in a manner that is respectful of the laws that we have and the people and the sovereignty of your country. South Africa is a sovereign. South Africa has its own challenges. South Africa has to put itself first before anybody else. And for me, that's why we need to learn from the Ibrahim Traores of this world in terms of what he's doing. And I don't know if you saw also in Namibia, there are reports, I just haven't checked and verified them, but apparently they've told the Americans to leave and they have taken over their mines back to themselves so that they can do their own thing. Now, for me, as much as we want a foreign investment, as much as we want our economy to be open, as much as we want to be part of the global village and be seen to be amongst the best countries in the world, we must prioritize our people. We must prioritize our challenges. We must prioritize poverty, which is huge. We must prioritize inequality, which is problematic. We must prioritize our rural environment, which needs to be commercialized to move from subsistence farming to sustainable commercial farming. We need to prioritize those. That comes first. And everything else is a very distant second, Slayola.
Just in closing, last question, and I want you to be as blunt with me as you can possibly can.
I always
You're a bit,
am, as you know. I'm always blunt.
you're a businessman. True, I agree. You're a businessman who's also worked in the political sphere. If B.E.E. were a business plan presented to you today, right now, would you still be investing in it?
Yes, I would invest in it. But also, you may look in my history and see that one of my best attributes is that I'm a turnaround specialist. I'm a strategist who turns around businesses. When I built a business in 2001, 2002, just before B.E.E. came in, a company called Talk IT, it was in trouble. It was making millions of losses. I became the CEO and the majority shareholder. We turned around that company. It was dead. People were writing it off. We turned around that company, Slayolo, and built it in 27 countries. It became one of the best training solutions providers. It became one of the best training solutions providers in the world. It became the Cisco Partner of the Year 7 years in a row. It became the Microsoft Partner of the Year twice in 4 or 5 years. Therefore, you need to have a turnaround mentality to it, and you need to get the right team to do it. Not people who just don't know what they're doing. Yes, I would take B.E.E. and turn it around and fix it for our people and make sure that black people are proud to have had something like this.
There you go. That was Professor Mthunzi Mdwaba. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Always a pleasure chatting to you. And looking forward to another conversation in the not so distant future.
Thank you, Slayalo. Bye-bye.
Bye. That was Professor Mthunzi Mdwaba, businessman, former politician, and someone who's seen the policy world from both the boardroom and the backbench. And I think that's what makes his insights a bit more palatable. He's seen both worlds and how they interact. So we've unpacked the promises, the pitfalls, and the politics of B.E.E. But now we turn the mic to you. Has B.E.E. helped break down the walls of economic exclusion, or has it just built a new elite behind a different set of gates? You can engage with us on our various social media pages. Should we keep B.E.E? Should we scrap it? Should we maybe remodel it to something else that is fitting of the current economic landscape of South Africa? Our number is 011-680-0355. On WhatsApp, you can send us a message or voice note on 061-766-0355. We're going to take a quick break. News and Views continues after this.